So now, all right, so you guys missed it. For like 2 minutes, I was rambling completely. Buttons.
It was a good ramble. It was a good ramble. We liked it.
Was it? Oh, good. So good morning, and thank you everyone for joining us. If you are new, this is the Coffee Table Talks, basically a live stream of all the really cool discussions that I come across. If you are not sure who the guy below me is, this is Chris Roberts, my favorite cybersecurity wizard, amongst other things. He's come along with us this morning. Josh Arnold is my husband and pretty much the biggest reason why I know anything about anything regarding InfoSec, how it is that I happen to say things and actually know what they mean. That's part of it. And then my special guest this morning is Rich Owen. And Rich, I stumbled across via LinkedIn, which is how I stumbled across most of everyone and anyone in InfoSec, basically offering help and services through my role with Secure Nation as a value-added reseller. And Rich said I would love to take advantage of that, except for I'm retiring in 3 weeks. So that was where that part of the conversation ended. I was instantly interested, scrolling through some of his background in his entire career, and asked what I thought was a small question, and it ended up being probably 4 hours worth of in-depth conversation where my mouth mostly was on the floor the entire time, while Rich unfolded just all of it was a Pandora's box of Rich Owen and where he started. And that was my first question. As a matter of fact, it was, how did you get started in InfoSec? So Rich, thank you for coming here today and hanging out this morning with us. I know it's early. Sorry, Chris. I did offer breakfast, to be fair.
Where the hell is it?
You said you were fine.
All right, I'm alive. I got a cup of tea. I'm happy.
Oh, good.
Well, I'm waking up. Let's put it that way. Yeah.
Fantastic. So, Rich, how did you get started in InfoSec? How long? Wait, let's start. How long is your career? First of all, let's start there. How long have you been in this game?
I started in the Army. I started in the Army security agencies and electronic warfare, electronic countermeasure systems repairman in 1970. So in other words, I learned security from the dark side with top secret information.
Yeah, and I researched into some of that. That was the ASA, right? And then there was a patch that was given out that you guys weren't even allowed to wear.
Well, yeah, there's a lot of cool stories about the Army Security Agency. Yeah. Anyway, probably most of them are not repeatable here, especially the song we used to sing, which is now politically incorrect. But anyway.
Yeah, let's not do that.
So anyway, really,
if it's any consolation, when I was in the military, we used to have a song that used to involve doing certain things to polar bears in the middle of winter, in the middle of night. So I'm with you. It ain't repeatable on an open channel.
There's a lot of what you call war stories, yes. Mm-hmm. So I guess to cut through a lot of the chase, I was, after 10 years in the Army Security Agency and 3 years as a contractor to NSA in England, I was on the team that designed and built the local area network for Mission Control Center there at Johnson. And I guess the NASA managers liked what they saw. They offered me a job, and I became a NASA employee to start off with as a project manager to manage about $5 million worth of small projects.
So what was it?
And that was excuse me.
Sorry, I think we're having a bit of lag, so I'm trying to make sure I'm in beat with you. But I wanted to go back and ask. You were telling Josh and I something about how it was that you got into your role initially in the Army, right? Because everyone that I've ever spoken to, say for Chris, I guess, has always been like, I got my start in cybersecurity with the Air Force. So I was curious as to how he went to Army instead.
Oh, okay. Well, the Army story is I volunteered. Well, kind of volunteered. I won the lottery. Kind of won it. I was number 8 in the very first draft lottery in 1969. So I knew I had a choice of I could wait and they could select where they were going to put me, and or I went to the military and I said, look, Air Force, I want to get in computers. And they said, cool, you sign up, you go to basic training, and some guy in San Antonio determines if you get into computers. I said, whoa, I don't like that timeline. There's no guarantee. So I went to the Army, and they said, well, it's not really computers, but can't really tell you too much about it. It's because it's all top secret and there's no Army security agency in Vietnam. I said, that's cool. So I signed me up, and come to find out, the first person that died in Vietnam was with what they called radio research. That's what the Army security agency was called in Vietnam. So
that's a pretty vague title.
If you're not familiar with the Army security agency, we were the NSA's element in the Army. We dealt with electronic intelligence and signals intelligence.
Right. Exactly. I was actually talking. My dad came over this morning. He takes our 5-year-old to kindergarten just because he enjoys doing it. And he came back by after he dropped him off, and we were talking about some things. My dad, during around the same time that you were with the Army, did go to the Air Force, signed up, and was given some sort of an assessment. I have no experience in this area whatsoever, but the kind of the testing that you were speaking about, and was found to have high marks in anything regarding cryptography and all that, and that was what his career path was going to be destined towards. He ended up having some slip disc and bulging disc in his back and was let to go home after about 6 weeks, I think. But I was talking to him. I was like, wow, you narrowly missed this very strange thing that was going to happen, and went home and became a butcher for 45 years, which is really cool too. But he's wicked good at at anything that's sensing a pattern or anything like that. But anyhow, I'm sorry. That was my personal relatability to anything that you have experience with as far as the first start for you. So did you mention how long you were with the Army in that role? How long were you there?
Yeah, I was just in under 10 years. I got out as a sergeant first class, which is the rank most people retire at after 20 years. So I did okay.
Yeah, I guess so. So you got out, and there was a friend, right, that you tapped to help you find a role somewhere, and that was the NASA.
Yeah,
NASA
I was part of
the.
That was. There was a part of the time when the Army security agency was bleeding people like me. They give us all kinds of excellent training, and come to find out that excellent training paid well on the outside. So a lot of people like me, after spending about 10 years, said thank you for the training and became a field engineer some other place. And like I said, I worked as a contractor for NSA for a while, and then I was on the design team for the network there in mission operations. So it was a great start.
So Chris, is that similar to?
Anyway, so I had an Army buddy make the connection for me to get me to a job at NASA.
It's nice. That's awesome. It's good to have friends.
Definitely.
Yeah. Chris, I saw you nodding. Is that something similar to your experience?
Yeah, I mean, my avenue into this industry is probably a little different. Like all of us, we've each got our own ways of getting in. I got yelled at a few times. That's probably the best way of looking at it for my way in. I started messing around with this. So I'm a little behind Rich insofar as annuals and years and stuff like that. As we were saying when we were behind the scenes, this is normally great when my daughter hasn't decided that she's going to color it. But I started messing with these things, I guess, late 70s, early 80s. My first system I ever really started messing around with was the good old Sinclair ZX80. So I think over here it was one of the Timex systems. And then that quickly went to my father having me arrested when I was in 1984, 85-ish time frame. for hacking into a bank and moving everything from his account into an account in a completely different name. Because he and I didn't really see eye to eye.
I didn't know that. I did not know that you were.
My father had me arrested or put a warrant out. My own father, yeah. He and I didn't really see eye to eye. We had a bit of a fractious relationship. It's probably the nicest way to put it. So yeah, please stand up on the doorstep to the house where my mother and I were living, and that's probably 15 or so. And it was like, Christopher, I think this is for you. And they confiscated. It was I'd broken in with a Commodore 64 and an Atari, one of the old 2600s, and completely reused that, modem configs, the whole lot. So I messed around with that stuff for a couple of years. They didn't press charges because they didn't know what the hell to do with me. It was interesting. They confiscated all the equipment. And then 18, I hit the military. I went into the military and did absolutely nothing in this industry. I learned out of airplanes for a living. And for, again, same thing, almost 10 years, 5 active, 5 reserve. I was deployed to all sorts of interesting parts of the world, doing all sorts of interesting stuff. As you say, getting shot in foreign countries, basically.
Wow.
Came out, went back into this industry because it was the one thing I knew. I left school when I was basically 15, 16. Went back into this industry in the early days. So, it was still like technical. It was still kind of tech support, networking, and this security thing wasn't really its own animal at that time. And ended up getting yelled at a few more times, and ended up working for some interesting folks out of Cheltenham who do some fun things. And from there, I worked with them for a number of years, and then ended up in the US in '98 working for some folks out of Virginia and other areas. So I got deployed. I was actually meant to be going to New Zealand. They were actually going to deploy me to New Zealand to go work on a project. But they deployed me into IBM, 3Com, and a number of other companies to go do work for them inside those companies. And so worked there, and they were deploying me over to New Zealand. And I ended up doing some interesting stuff with some Navy ships and a few other things, ciphers and crypto. And ended up getting dropped over here for, it was meant to be a number of years, and I stayed.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah.
A friend of mine is in the chat, Summer Dan. She's the director of EBR Career and Technology Academy here locally. That I try to help her as much as possible. But she actually came to Josh a few years. Josh, you want to talk about some? She's mentioned the kid, so I'm just I'm not divulging anything she's not already comfortable.
He's an adult now, but he was getting in a I guess we would put it a little bit of trouble with the school network there that wasn't segmented. And when you give a kid access to teacher computers,
that can get you. It's interesting. Again, back in the day, it was one of those things. Nowadays, they'll throw the book at you. Unfortunately,
we had. I know one of the schools that I worked at. There was a kid. All he did was write a command prompt script that would remotely shut down all the computers in the computer lab because people weren't turning off their computers like the teacher told them to. They threw the book at him for that, and I was like, when they came and talked to us, I was like, look, guys, this is. He didn't do anything. But what if he did? But he did.
But he did.
Yeah.
You can't throw books at people for.
He essentially walked into he walked into the office and turned the lights off. Like that's
Mm-hmm.
calm
But the
down.
problem is, he walked into the office.
He did, and that what? Shame on you, not shame on him. All he did was open the door.
Believe me.
Yep.
I do it all the time. I still do it. The computer, the CFAA violations. Talk about tiptoeing. I don't tiptoe the line. Let's face it. I drive a fucking steamroller right across it. So
Yeah.
let's be honest on that one.
Well, and it all that was something else that came out of the conversations that Rich and Josh and I had was just it seems that people don't really focus on the easy stuff, which is the fundamentals of how to build everything. So Rich, you basically, so what was there as far as network on those launch sites at NASA? What was there? What were you starting with? Did we lose Rich?
Okay. Well, first of all, you mentioned kids in school and stuff. In my retirement job right now, I'm writing books, and the book right here, Time Out, is going to be, should hit the book stand in a couple of weeks. It's my version of what's a series of stories about a high school freshman who ends up working with the FBI to solve cyber crimes. And this first book, Time Out, is because he's in a smart school and things start going dumb, and he helps the authorities figure out who hacked what and how and why. And so that's just one of the fun things I'm doing. I'm writing these books for middle school and high school kids to hopefully influence some people to get involved in their career. So anyway,
so when I role model kind of thing, I like it.
Yeah. It's a good chance for me to plant some positive seeds. Speaking of which, the name of my company is Johnny's Security Seed.
I know. You're so
anyway, back to NASA.
Back to NASA.
That's pretty amazing. I like that.
So the NASA management saw the job that I did with the building and installing the local area network. It was fiber at that time, which was brand new to us. A lot of fun. I was modifying Unix internals. I said Unix, not Linux. Yes. It was pre-X Windows. It was all, I could still spell grep. So I was doing that technical stuff, and they hired me to manage $5 million worth of small projects. And that was a time that computer security was starting to make rumbling noises. In fact, after I was hired, I remember, I think it was the first computer security computer security conference. I went to a national security conference in Baltimore, and virus number 5 was out. I think it was called Michelangelo. So that shows you kind of like how long ago it was. Number 5, yes.
There were 5.
So
were 4
what I started with.
So number 5, yeah, got it.
In mission operations, it's not that they weren't doing security. In fact, they were flying classified missions. So the classified missions were all run by the Air Force, by Air Force rules, or what the Air Force thought was security. And then there were other, where people would write passwords on whiteboards and, kind of generally do kind of what they felt was kind of the appropriate thing to do. But at that time, there were no standards such as NIST 853 or NIST Cybersecurity Framework or ISO or HIPAA or SOX, or I could keep going on with the entire alphabet. None of that existed. The only thing that existed was 1980 OECD principles for information security and privacy. And you can go out there and Google that. The principles have been updated since then. They've 2004, I think Microsoft did an update on them. ISSA did a paper called Generally Accepted Information Security Principles, which pretty well mirrors the principles I'm talking about. That was ISSA's attempt for us to be like the accounting people. They have GAAP for their accounting standards, so we decided we needed generally accepted information security principles. So I had those principles, and I had a brand new book that was called the Orange Book.
Oh, did you
for
bring
obvious
it?
reasons.
Oh, you brought it. Yay. Oh, we can't see it though because you'll have to hold it there for a second longer. There we go. Isn't that nice?
Recognize that book. Really recognize that book. The first version.
Yeah. So that was the start of, that was the guidance I had in talking to other people. Now, I need to point out that although, yes, I say I did security program mission operations, I was kind of like a team leader. I mean, I was leading the effort, but the real reason that happened was because of Gene Kranz. the director for mission operations. If you don't recognize the name, go watch Apollo 13. He was the guy in the white vest. Mr. Failure is not an option. He decided our missions will be secure, and by gosh, they were secure. I have dozens of war stories. One I particularly like was we were replacing a Unisys mainframe with some networked Unix computers for the flight analysis and design system. Somehow or another, the security guy, me, didn't get an invite to the design review, but I found out about it and snuck in the back of the auditorium. And they're about ready to throw holy water on this design. And I'm saying, whoa, wait a minute, what about audit? And they said, oh, we don't have money for audit. I said, wrong answer. He says, well, says who? I says me, but if you don't believe me, go ask Gene. And they said, what do you mean by audit?
Yeah.
They didn't want to climb that mountaintop.
Right. And that's a problem a lot of people still face today is let's build it. Let's go. Put it out there. Everybody get on board. Come on.
Yeah.
And then nobody asks the security guy. Nobody.
That's so true. And the most important point that I want to make here is the reason I was successful there is because of Gene Kranz. Strong leadership at the top is the most important thing you got going for you. Then I was lucky. I had 6 contracts. In fact, one of my contracts was with MITRE. I had 2 MITRE people on my team. So it wasn't like I dreamed this stuff out by myself. And then I was fortunate enough to be involved with some really smart, great people. For example, in creating the manual that we created for mission operations, which later we called the Pink Book for obvious reasons.
Yeah, because it's pink, like the orange book.
Ross Leo was the person that helped me put it together. His name is actually on the top signature up there, and so is mine, and Gene Kranz is on that page. But Ross Leo and Hal Tipton, you may have heard the name Hal Tipton. He was like the second ISSA president and the first president of ISC Squared. So I know that we had discussions about the organization of the book and what was important. We talked a lot about CIA. In fact, I had discussions at one of the national computer security conferences with Don Parker, who was trying to say that security was confidentiality, integrity, availability, usability, functionality, and accessibility, or something like that. He had 6 things and really well thought out, rational. And I said, this is great, but nobody's going to remember those 6 things. If we talk confidentiality, integrity, and availability, we put it in that order. CIA people will resonate with CIA. So that's the reason why in my book, we have CIA as one of the as part of the foundation of my document. I've come to find out that somebody maybe I think I've heard in the 60s may have actually talked about security being CIA before that, but for us it was significant there at NASA that we built our program around the CIA and the principles, and then the Orange Book, and then the Red Book for networks. The interesting thing also is at time we called it computer security, which means you go through the man traps and everything to get in the room where the computer is, and that's the computer. Only later, and right soon after that, you start to have network security and LANs and WANs. So at the time, it was computer security. One of the issues we had, in fact, in the Mission Control Center is we had a RACF protected mainframe, and that RACF protected mainframe was to protect itself. You could do anything after you got into the mainframe, but it was very particular about what somebody from the outside could do coming into the mainframe.
I love that Chris is
So we
laughing.
actually had to create a 2-factor. We had to create a special 2-factor situation where the people in the Mission Control Center would log on to these brand new Unix workstations and via a personalized floppy, which would in turn log them onto the RACF protected mainframe, so we could manage 2-factor authentication and track individual accountability.
We had a great question
So
come up in the.
that was just some of the stuff was going there. Okay.
Great. There's a great question that came up in the chat from my friend Will McCullen with Pima Community College out in Arizona, Tucson, I think, somewhere in there. He wanted to know, did you know at the time while you were doing this that you were basically defining how the rest of us would move forward with compliance in our industry? Like, did you have that perspective on anything that you were doing?
No, I was just simply I was just solving my individual problems of the day. Now, I do admit that I did get involved in ISSA and helped create some chapters and became international president of ISSA. So later I got into the driving motion, but there I was simply like I said, an engineer that was confronted with a problem. And I had a strong leadership that said, this stuff needs to be secure. And I was studying engineering principles. And like, for example, in the ISO standards, it talks about the Deming Do Plan Check Act, or these days we talk about OODA loops. I was studying engineering principles about feedback through op amps and stuff, and using feedback models way back then. Another great example of some of the foundational stuff that we did that, you look back in hindsight and you go, wow, well, we were doing that back then. After I put my pink book together, we costed how much it's going to take to run my security program. And Gene wasn't impressed with the dollar figure that the contractors came up with. It was like, whoa. So we sat down and we did something called risk-based security. We started looking at every control and making a determination. We have to do it.
I hate that your audio is breaking up. Is there a smarter way to
do it? Can we reduce risk and reduce costs at the same time? And one good example is we had a requirement that said graphically separated, the connection between those two systems shall be encrypted. Makes perfect sense. Anybody reading this says, okay, well, that's the right thing to do. Well, we had the Mission Control Center on one side of the campus, and we had the Shuttle Mission Training Facility on the other side of campus. They were connected. Those connections should have been encrypted. But there was no reason to encrypt them because the Air Force had already put in a fiber optic connection between those two systems. That fiber ran through a sealed tube that was pressurized where we knew nobody could get to the fiber even to try to get information off of a microbin. So the only thing encryption would have added was a little bit of cyclic redundancy checking, error checking. So that's just one example of here's the rule, it makes sense, but maybe it doesn't always apply. So we used that methodology and we avoided over $25 million in costs by doing risk-based security in the late 80s. Although it didn't seem to be in vogue until 2010 or so.
That's amazing. I see the juxtaposition between you and Chris. As you're building it, he was figuring out how to tear it down. That's how I feel
Well, Chris, I did have a Heath kit back when I was in England. And when I said England, I meant NSA GCHQ, if you've ever heard of Menwood Hill Station. So anyway.
I might know that neck of the woods.
Maybe. Just a little.
I'm still sitting on, I think it's 25 years worth of paperwork that I had to actually re-sign not that long ago. Again, to say that, so much of the stuff is going to spend.
Yes.
You know the deal on that crap. Actually, just having a good conversation behind the scenes with Jeff Mann on this one.
These are these are all the
Well,
reasons why I'm like.
Yeah, it's an interesting.
One of the. Oh yes, it is, and actually I'm going to be giving a presentation in about a month or so from now, talking about Groundhog Day. It's still continuing. Every day is another day. Today I'm going to learn French, and tomorrow I'm going to learn to play the piano because I'm doing the same job over and over again because It's still there. The hackers are still there.
Mm-hmm.
They are.
Hackers are still here. That'd be
One
me.
of the
Hey,
foundational.
what's
One of the things, like I said, I'm very excited that having built the security program there at Mission Operations based on principles, because that has served me well through my career. This is one of the things I think today is being missed. We're hiring people to do SOX. We're hiring people to do PCI, and management's going, are we compliant? Management's missing the big picture, or are we secure? Are we doing the right things to protect ourselves? So we're missing that aspect. And then another wonderful thing about working at Mission Operations is they always had a focus of contingency. What if? If businesses had been focused on principles and what if, the sudden everybody's got to work from home would not have been such a big impact to many businesses, because they would have already been working up. I know what my data is. I know where it is. I know who has access to it. And people would have done maybe what if we do something else?
Right. Chris, did you have something to add to that?
Yeah. Your other challenge is, I mean, you think about what NASA's mission is, there are teams and teams and teams and teams of people whose sole job is to make sure that those rather expensive pilots sitting at the pointy end of basically an explosive device actually go up and come back down again. You don't have that in business. In business, and especially probably up until maybe the last year or two, most people's attitude is, if I screw up, we lose a few computers. That, I think, is the big difference. Now, going into this era that we're hitting, pretty much at full speed, is when I screw up, I kill somebody. But society and industry and people as a whole don't have that attitude. NASA's had that from day one. Let's be perfectly honest. When NASA screwed up, and even go back before NASA, I mean, Air Force and everybody else, when the origins of the space agency knew, when they fucked up, people died. And so that's always been at the forefront, which is why you have primary and secondary and tertiary and redundant, and a secondary redundant. I mean, I live just down the road from a redundant NASA facility that was built up behind the hills that was purely there in case the primary and secondary systems went down. We don't have that in business, because business goes, I lose data, I lose a system, I lose a computer. There was even healthcare to some degree didn't put the correlation between, hey, if I fuck up on security, we're going to kill people. It's like, I've got human backups. I've got people that can back it up. There was never that contingency of a human will die if I don't do my job right. We're getting there, but there's still, I mean, Ryan Cloutier and a couple of folks from there have got it hit properly. I mean, his saying is analog human in a digital world. But we still haven't figured that out. And I think that's the biggest challenge.
Oh, yeah, I definitely agree. Sorry, I got caught up.
I totally agree.
The chat.
And that's one of the things I really liked about NASA. And although NASA is civilian, it coupled from the military associated with mission. If you've been in the military, you've worked at someplace like NASA, you understand mission is not kind of a guideline, kind of if we feel like doing it today. This is what we're going to accomplish, or potential other people may die.
We're doing the same thing. I do a bunch of work with some of the SOCOM and SoftWorks folks down in Florida, and they're obviously supporting 12-man teams, which are getting deployed into all sorts of interesting parts of the world. And it's the same thing. You screw up your job, they're not all coming back. And I've got enough blood on my hands. I don't need any more blood on my hands, especially in the civilian side of the world. And I think, again, it's an attitude. We don't have that. Jeff just put it up on the chat channel. In the civilian world, typically it equates to, I've screwed up. It's a financial impact. What'll happen is, the insurance industry now picks up on it. If we screw up, it's like, oh, well, I got ransomware. Well, insurance will pay for it. There's always been a safety net there for us. Whereas, again, NASA, you didn't have a safety net. You screwed up, people didn't come back. Or if they did, they kind of came back in pieces. And it's the same thing with the military world. You know, you don't screw up, otherwise people don't come back.
Well, Josh
And
is.
that,
Go ahead.
hmm?
I was just going to say, Josh has been in the trenches of exactly that, right, in the civilian world. I think I ask him every day about some of his perspectives, how the feelings are across the board, and it is frustrating. Like,
well, yeah. I mean, I was going to say to that. I mean, it's almost like because we have the insurance now, but before, you know, until a couple of years ago, we didn't have this. Now that we do, it's. I mean, okay. So we got. They're starting to weigh the cost between the premium and actually being secure.
Yeah.
Why do we want to close these vulnerabilities if it's going to cost us this much money to do it, and if we just get, you know, smacked around, we're covered. You know. And that's, I mean, you guys talk about that, you know, on the shit show. If there should be such a thing with this cybersecurity insurance that you're not insurable. We come and look at your network, and you know what I mean with our homeowners insurance. One of the kids broke a step on the playground, and it was just a little wooden step, and it's about this much farther from the step, and they were like, "Hey, you need to replace that, or we're just going to cancel it." I mean, why aren't we doing that?
Because I think there's several reasons. One, because the insurance industry originally saw a cash cow. No two ways about it. They were like, okay, I mean, absolutely. Now, they're getting their ass handed to them. And to your point, they have had their ass handed to them for the last couple of years. And I think they are now trying to go, okay, what do we need to do about it? Well, we need to get more aware of it. We need to understand metrics. We need to understand risk. You know, all the stuff that Rich is talking about. It's like, okay, you know, finally they're catching up. You know, 30 years too late to some degree, but they're getting there. But again, they're not there in the same place. And again, inside an organization, your first battle is always one of these, well, I've got insurance, I'm okay. Actually, no, you're not. And here's why. Because nowadays, what the insurance company is doing is calling people like us up and going, do me a favor, just go and check before I write this check out for $1 million or $2 million, and before I pay the ransomware on behalf of this company, just go check and just make sure that when they filled out that self-attestation that they're all compliant and everything's good and they got a firewall and the stupid freaking thing's plugged in. Just check it out for me and make sure. And then kadunk, claim denied. Or they try I mean, this was the interesting one. There was a big case within the last 12 months where one of the insurance companies tried denying a claim. It was a big ass claim. It was like tens of millions, if I remember rightly. I have to find it on the Googles. And then the company freaking sued the insurance company. I'm like, this is just nuts. I mean, we've gotten to the point, rather than actually spending good money on securing the computers, I'd rather spend bad money on lawyers to actually try to defend the position that I fucked up in essence. And I mean, it's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous.
That goes back to what Rich was saying about, you know, sitting down and actually taking the time to understand the controls and the risk acceptance that they were willing to take, right? If your risk acceptance is nothing and insurance is my net, then I guess that's a business decision. Is it a wise one? Obviously, the rest of us don't think so.
Right.
But I mean, just how much are you willing to gamble with an entire company? Like, really?
There's another twist to this. Actually, a couple of times I have managed to reduce the premium that my company had to pay for insurance by documenting having a good security program to start with.
See, there you go.
Documentation is incredibly important. It's something I learned early on as well. Somebody come to me and say, well, I want to do this. And I go, well, you really can't do that. You need to do it this way. And they'd go, why? Says who? So by having a documented set of standards by which we would operate our business, or the NASA or whatever company, I could point to the standards and say, well, here it is, the reason, what we're going to do and why. And we could sit down and look at the requirement and see how we can meet their business needs. But having a documented, something documented as to what you're doing and why goes a long way in coming to a solution.
Yeah.
Yeah. Jeff actually hit it, and he hit it right on this one, which is, obviously, with the military, the NASA, the DoD, and various other mentalities, it's the same thing. It's like, what's the equivalent of a human life? How many of those? And actually, I was just about to bash out a response to it, but yeah, it frustrates me that we don't and aren't able to actually think about that in those terms in the civilian side of the world. Probably because the consequences haven't always been there, or if they have, we've been able to circumvent them or figure out other. I mean, it's I don't know.
Or if they have, it doesn't matter to the company as much as it matters to people. I mean, you look at you look at any given HR department. You get into their systems, you get all of this user data that that they keep just sitting there. It's not secured. Okay, so we got breached. I mean, what does that mean to the company? We've got insurance. What about those individual people that?
We'll give them lifelong. We'll give them more lifelong.
Right. No, I mean, and see, and that's the. I mean, it was funny. My taxes this year, somebody else decided to file for me, as me. And
I've had a few. I keep getting that every year. You'll get a nice little national insurance PIN number from those folks, and that's apparently their compensating control. Yeah,
and it was funny because my mother-in-law and a couple of other people were like, "Well, how did you get hacked? You're insecure." I'm like, the HR department, doctors' offices. I mean, there's no telling. And then, the companies and the people that we work for. It's kind of up to us. That's the us guys in the trenches that are sitting there going, "Hey, we're not secure. If somebody gets this, oh no, you're fine." But it's not, because I actually give a crap about my coworkers, and somebody may be waiting for that tax refund check that they were hoping to get, but now that some jackass decided to file for them, and it affected our the whole stimulus check thing. We didn't, it affected us throughout. And I was like, okay. I mean, and sorry, I'm rambling now. Go ahead.
No, you're right. I mean, you're right. I think that's the problem. Again, it's consequences and actions. To Rich's point, you lose a body, There's a fucking coffin there with a flag draped over it. That's a very visual thing. I lose a credit card, and then you want in the post. I lose an identity, we'll get LifeLock for them, or a PIN number from INS or whoever it is. That physical consequence doesn't appear. And if somebody came around, in other words, I'm a company, I'm holding on to 100,000 people's identities, I lose those identities. If then all of a sudden bodies started piling up in the streets because of my inability to safeguard the very data and the very people I'm responsible for, then maybe we take it seriously. But it doesn't happen. It's like, we'll give them LifeLock, we'll do this, and I'll pay the fine, and then that fine I'm going to divide up into the next 2 years worth of business, and I'm just going to call it a cost of doing business.
Or how many? Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there.
No, you did.
How many times have you heard, if they want to steal my identity, that's fine. They'll give it back. Yeah. As soon as they get it, they're not going to want it anymore. No, they're still going to want it, because somebody out there will give you a credit card. Or how about the loans, the live check loans that come out? Those, that's under your social. That's those, credit card consolidation loans that they send this live check in the mail, and you just have to provide a, driver's license to cash it at the bank. And you're entering into a loan. I'm like, guys, your identity is more important than you. They'll give it back. I don't care if they steal my bank account. There's nothing in it. They might put money in it for me. They're going to feel bad. How often do we hear that?
Yeah. Too often.
You hit upon. Yeah, this whole thing hits upon one of my favorite rants, and that is, we live in the information age. In other words, information is an asset. If we managed all of our other assets the way we manage our information assets, we would interview maybe 10% of the people we hired. We would run the business out of petty cash. We might know how many buildings we have. We might have some maintenance on those buildings. We're not treating information as the asset. And it's not just an asset like money. where you can see it sitting on the table and count it, you can have a loss without losing possession with this particular asset. So I could go on for hours about how we're not managing information properly as an asset.
Oh yeah, 100% agree.
You may even know that you lost that until the right moment or the wrong moment, depending on how you look at it.
That's very true. Yeah, what was it that whenever they filed under your social security number for the tax purposes, one of the first questions that came out of us was, what if we have to pay that money back? What if the money that they fraudulently gain off of our tax return, where's the government going to ask for the payback from? Are they going to go find the criminal and ask them, can you please give it back?
That's the problem, yeah.
Or do they have Josh's name and social security number and address and bank account information? They're not.
Well, and then the marvelous part about that is the way to fix that was, oh, well, you have to file by paper and send it in, and then that will spark an investigation. You mean I can't go on the website and click help? No, you have to file by hand, and then that'll spark an investigation, and then you'll hear back. No, I mean, and it's like I said, I mean, any other place, even filing flood insurance claims, and we know this from 2016, I was able to go online and go, help, I've flooded. Contact me. And they called me within, an hour. And then that whole process, I mean, but information, that gets stolen, we don't.
We haven't figured out how to deal with the problem. I mean, we got talking with some folks the other evening about, how much data I have and how much data we're sitting on. And, there's a bunch of us that are sitting out of a couple of servers that are not necessarily in Germany, but we're burning ourselves out of Germany. And we're sitting on, it was about 19 and a half, closing in on 20 billion user IDs, passwords, email accounts, and all sorts of other stuff. And it's relatively well deduped. It's not perfect, but it's relatively well deduped. And so that's fairly unique. And I mean, that's billion. I mean, it's just ridiculous how much data is out there. So, I mean, healthcare itself has lost, I think it's like 700 and something odd million records. I mean, to give them credit, at least they've been thorough. They've lost everybody's record twice, just to make sure that they've covered all the bases. And it's just, and I think that's the problem. We're not operating from that mentality, or there's been enough convenient controls in place, and it's that digital issue in an analog world. Again, hate to say it, pile up a few more bodies, we might actually pay attention.
Oh yeah, I mean, I agree with you there.
Yeah. But, and again, the onus is on us, to your point. I went through the same issue. The IRS gets on and says, hey, you filed your taxes. No, I didn't. Well, it says here you did. No, I didn't. And then you spend the next couple of hours figuring that shit out over the next couple of days. And all of a sudden, I know what I bill out at per hour. I know what, any decent contractor or consultant bills out at per hour. You're in the hole for 5, 10, 15, 20,000 billable hours worth of time to actually sort out something that's not your freaking fault. And at some point, you got to throw the bullshit flag and go, guys, the system's so fucking broken. What the hell do we do about it?
Well,
to Rich's.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I'm good. Go for it.
Well, like Matt said, I mean, with so many data breaches that, talking about that, how do you even know where your stuff was compromised from? I mean, to even get them to help. Was it Equifax? Was it this one? Was it that one?
So so here's the algorithm. I mean, let's be perfectly honest. PCI Visa DSS is, for those of us that are a little jaded and a little sarcastic in this world, Visa got hit with a huge fine a number of years ago, and they're like, oh shit, we're gonna make our money back. So welcome to PCI. As cruel as it sounds, it's not far off of the truth. But then when you take a look at it, I mean, what ends up happening, Visa's not eating that cost. They're sending it to the bank. The bank will look at the transactions that you've had and they'll go back to the merchant. They've got a decent enough algorithm. I mean, I remember many years ago working, for the folks in Cheltenham, and we ended up doing some stuff with American Express on helping to build those algorithms. And we're talking 20 years ago, we were building those algorithms to understand and detect a lot of the fraud. I mean, they've become a hell of a lot more sophisticated since then. So more often than not, they can turn around and say, you are the common point of compromise to the retailer or to the industry. That's why they know. Now, that retailer then starts the legal argument of, no, we didn't lose all of those, we only lost half of those, or all that bullshit that goes with it. So they know who's actually, where that breach came from. The problem is they don't always make it public, or, they're not going to turn and say, hey, retailer X just lost 10 million, and, go to this website and see if you were one of those 10 million. Because then, you could probably go throw a Molotov cocktail through their front window, to be perfectly honest.
So we've covered a lot of stuff this morning. Well, I don't know if you guys have noticed.
Yeah, let's hit one other thing, actually. We've become ambivalent. We've become almost immune to it. I mean, kind of like Rich. I mean, the conversations with Rich are kind of really interesting, because I remember working on one of the first publicly aware breaches, the DSW shoe warehouse one, like 15, 16, 17 years ago, whenever the heck that one happened. At that point in time, the mass public wanted to take the CEO, the CFO, the CISO out and tar and feather them. I mean, they wanted their asses beaten, whipped, kicked down the damn road, every single thing. I mean, there were calls for heads to roll. Now, the company down the road loses another couple $100 million, or Equifax. They actually managed to fire one person. Why did nobody set fire to their fucking headquarters? I mean, seriously. I personally, I would have been at the front of the damn thing with a Molotov cocktail through the front reception window going, you arseholes were told months ago and you didn't fucking care. Whereas most of the time nowadays, it's like, get an attitude, care about something. It's a digital world out there, and you've lost your ass before you've even had a chance to join in the race.
Can I just... So I talk to a whole mess of people every day, Saturday and Sunday included. Hell, Josh gets mad. Everyone I talk to, all the people who are super friendly, engaging, at least just, hey, nice to meet you, glad you're here, right? And I do the same. But it's nice to be here. I can do this. Let me know if you need it, right? The ones that I come across that are the rudest, crappiest people, I will see in some big headline 3 to 6 months later. I'm telling you, I have no idea, but it's like, that's your attitude towards anybody wanting to even just, hey, how are you, right? It's indicative of how their program as a whole is run or cared for or anything else. They don't see people. They don't have the attitude of, data equals person. They just don't. And it shows in just the way that they engage with the outside world in any way. That's just been my personal experience. I could be wrong. Some of the nicest people get breached. I know that. But I'm just saying, as far as large companies that I have walked up to and been, hi, how are you? Let's talk. I don't care. Whatever it is. Whatever you did 10 years ago. How'd you get into cybersecurity? I have people ask me that all the time. How do we get into cybersecurity? I'm like, you know what? I don't know. But my friend Rich, he signed up for the Army after he was drafted. Chris Roberts broke some stuff, and his dad called the cops on him. And Josh Arnold, my nagging mother said, "You're really good at computers. You should do that." And we went, you know what? That's right. That's true.
Worked at a hotel and played on their Wi-Fi. So
that too. He got into it by playing around and breaking crap, and then realized, wow, I am so interested in this. I should pursue a degree in it. And then after that, get some experience and get some certs in it, as it applies to my experience already. And the whole time, Rich is building it up and Chris is knocking the shit down while the rest of us are just carrying on. it was so great to have you. We're going to have to do this again next week, Rich, if that's cool with you. I'd love to have you back.
Sure.
And we'll have some times to.
Absolutely.
I really think the next topic of conversation, we should focus on some of that incoming InfoSec professionals, right? On steps and tips and things that they should do, and local outreach and all these, just the whole gambit. How'd you get here? How'd you get a job? Right? Like that. I get that. Chris, I'm sure you get asked that question like 1,000 times a day.
I do, and then you've got amazing people like Katia Dean
Yes.
and Renee Small and Chris, and there's so many other people out there who put so much stuff on there, like, hey,
Oh, it
welcome to
is.
InfoSec.
It is. They like name
You
and lights.
Google shit before you
spotlight.
ask me the question. Yeah.
Yeah, anybody that comes to me, that's usually who I highlight first is Katia and Renee Small. I'm like,
Oh my
go
God.
follow them this way.
Yeah. Yeah. Google shit. Seriously, when you've Googled shit, then actually come back to me and ask me the more awkward questions.
Exactly.
Yeah. No, this was fun. Thank you. I hugely appreciate it. You need to, I'm actually going to put a plug in for Jeff. You need to get Jeff on here at some point. Jeff and Rich together I would actually get up and get out of bed to listen to that one. I mean, you got two old curmudgeons of the industry, shall we say, hanging out.
I love it.
That'd be totally fun.
Is
Yeah.
that something we're gonna have to do? Not live stream though, you guys. I don't need people driving by my house real slow. Okay, like
I get used to it. It's kind of fun. When they come to the door and they try to be nice, always say, "Show me a warrant," and then pick up the phone to the EFF. Seriously, those are the two things you do. That's it. And at that point in time, it just changes. It's way more fun that way.
I'm very quickly gonna rely on my soccer mom persona and be like, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know anything. What are you talking?
Oh, that's awesome.
Thank you guys so much for hanging out. Chris, I knew the
dear,
only
I
way
got
to
you.
get you out of bed was to put you in front of the camera, though.
Yeah, I'm actually gonna go curl up on the sofa with the dog and get some more sleep. I swear.
Man, that
Awesome.
sounds
And thanks
amazing.
for everybody for hanging out in the chat. We'll see you next week. Same bat time, same bat channel. I like